Cost of living crisis be damned. The Steam Spring Sale is on now from March 16th until March 23rd. Let's check out some fantastic strategy and simulation game deals. There's something for everybody, and each one will be presented like this, with the name and the discount on screen. And as you may have already picked up, we're already checking out the first one. This is Anno 1800, and at 75% off, it presents itself with a pretty favourable discount. If you're unfamiliar, this is a city builder set in and around the industrial age. Indeed, 1800 is not just in the name for no reason. But what's really special about this one is not just the beautiful world that you play within, but also, more importantly, the fact that it really presents a wonderful economic simulator as well. It's more than just building pretty cities, although it will let you do that. It's about resourcing them. It's about connecting them via trade, strategy, and of course, potentially conflict. The game is, of note, now available on console, and at the time of recording, when this video will be most relevant to you, it's also free to play, I should note, so you can actually try before you buy with Anno 1800. Moving along to the next entry in my list, this is a grand strategy game. A slightly more complicated one, Terra Invicta. At 25% off, it presents itself at roughly $30. A quick note, the prices that I'll be showing on screen are rough conversions. It will vary depending on your region, but I'll always present it in US dollars, not pesky New Zealand dollars. I digress. Terra Invicta is a grand strategy game like no other. You start off in an Earth layer where you're playing as one of many factions, maybe favorable towards the alien invaders, likely not so much. You're progressing through a tech tree, of course. You're expanding across Earth to establish bases and extra control over populations, and then you break free into the next layer, the space simulation, where spaceships and space stations are just the start. Terra Invicta is a fantastic grand strategy game, and while it's not the only sci-fi strategy game on this list, and its complexities may be a little off-putting at first, it really is worth sitting down and just getting to know the game for a few hours. If you're into grand strategy or space strategy, then Terra Invicta really is one for you. Moving along though, the next recommendation on my list is Frostpunk. At 80% off, this one is literally the change that you'd find behind the couch away from you, experiencing one of the slightly more hardcore, but don't be put off, survival-focused city builders. Frostpunk really is about resource management. It's about fighting your way through the cold because the city must survive. Frostpunk also, interestingly, like some previous and future entries on this list, has another little fun fact. Frostpunk 2 is coming out supposedly later this year in 2023. So now might be a great time, if you haven't already, to pick it up at 80% off. Familiarize yourself with this slightly hardcore survival-focused city builder, of course in a Frostpunk setting, and maybe get prepared for Frostpunk 2, which is looking like, from what we've seen so far, to be a fairly interesting release and will be fairly high on my calendar. Next up, it's Civilization 6. With a caveat, I'm recommending the Platinum Edition in particular. Let's talk a little bit about why. The gameplay that you're seeing on screen is from the latest DLC, the Leader Pass, which is nearly wrapping up now, and it will likely be the last DLC for Civilization 6, because of course Firaxis have announced that they're working on a new mainline title for Civilization. We assume Civ 7. However, that does not mean that now is a bad time to buy or play Civ 6, in fact quite the opposite. It's the most played historical 4X strategy game still to this day, some 6 years after its release, for very good reason. Civilization 6 delivers an experience almost like no other. And the base game itself, it's worth noting, is 90% off, so you can pick it up for about $6 or $7. However, as of today, at the time of recording, Civilization 6 is also available now inside of Xbox Game Pass, and I know previously has been distributed for free on Epic Games as well, so it's fairly easy to pick up Civilization 6, and if you want to own it outright, honestly, just buying the base version is good enough. However, if you're a little bit more familiar with strategy games, which you may be if you're watching this video, then the Platinum Edition might be for you. The Platinum Edition, as I recommended, is at a great discount, 91% off. You'll get the main expansions for the game, but not necessarily all of the DLC civilizations or leaders. You can pick them up afterwards, though. I think the Platinum Edition is a great sweet spot for someone wanting to own Civilization 6 now on Steam. Get a good deal, get in while you can, I reckon. If you're looking for something a little different, though, Humankind is 66% off. That's the best discount we've seen since Humankind released August 2 years ago. And at around $20 US, it's a fantastic 4X historical strategy game, one that I've spent a lot of time with. I have a link actually to my partner program link that you can purchase below. You'll get the same discount as you would buying it through Steam, but I get a little kickback. It's a wonderful 4X historical strategy game, but it's not alone. Of course, there's also Old World at 25% off, bringing it in at around $30 US. Old World is a 4X historical strategy game, but one that's a little bit different, incorporating elements from the likes of Crusader Kings, where it's about building up characters, a family, a dynasty. As you can see on screen, the characters not only age, interact with one another, but of course play very real roles as well. The event-based system lends perfectly into the development of these characters and helps to set Old World apart from other 4X historical strategy games. Although, as you can see on screen, it's got all of those things that we know and love, like those hexagonal tiles and that beautiful unit combat. Honestly, all three of these games are highly enjoyable. They all offer something a little bit different. But if you're looking for a 4X historical strategy game to scratch that itch, I am certain that you'll find success in at least one of those. Moving on to something a little bit different now. This is Oxygen Not Included. And at a 66% off discount, it brings it down to a cruisy 10 New Zealand dollars, so about 6 or 7 US. Oxygen Not Included is a colony sim at its core, a base building game, and a survival game. It has overwhelmingly positive reviews and tens of thousands of them for good reason. Looking at it, when you're looking at it from the 2D view, you know, the base building in-game view, it looks a little bit like Terraria, if you're looking for something to kind of refer it to. However, the colony sim elements to it lend more towards something like Rimworld, for example. Somewhere in between, you find Oxygen Not Included, and I think it provides not only a really enjoying and satisfying world to play in, but also, as you can tell by the footage, a fairly fun and colourful one at that. It's worth a go, and a fantastic colony sim at that. Moving along to a game that almost didn't make it into my list, but I'm glad it did. This is Hades, and it's 50% off, which, for something that's won Game of the Year more times than you and I can likely count after staring at our computer screens all day, 50% off is a fantastic discount. Hades is a roguelike game, it's a godlike game. Progress through level by level, die, come back and try it all again, but with progression carrying through and a really satisfying in-game combat system. Hades deserves all of its awards and more, and now is a great time to pick it up because just like Frostpunk, we're looking forward to Hades 2 potentially coming out this year. Moving along to a grand strategy title, Stellaris from Paradox at 75% off. Not alone in the Paradox catalogue, we'll cover a little bit more of that in a bit. Stellaris still holds the title for my favourite 4X historical strategy game. Terra Invicta is fantastic too, we talked about it at the start, but Stellaris just offers something a little bit different. That 4X element that I love, exploring the universe, potentially tampering with some fledgling alien life on new planets to discover, city building, and politics and geopolitics that always satisfies me, both at the local and the galaxy-wide level. Stellaris is an easy recommend to sci-fi strategy lovers. However, of course, Paradox also have Hearts of Iron 4, which similarly is at a 75% off discount, and takes a lot of that grand strategy from Stellaris, brings it down to Earth and slaps it into a World War II environment where land-based and, of course, naval and air combat really shines. This is Paradox's best land combat game, in my opinion, well worth a look. Or, alternatively, we have Victoria 3, which we've covered a lot on the channel. I won't spend a lot of time on it here for that reason, but it is 20% off, which is a reasonable discount considering it only came out around 5 months ago. A new music pack released today as part of the grander version, if you don't just have the base version. you will have picked that up for free already, which is a nice addition. Again, 20% off, not bad. Moving along to a more hardcore entry and a classic at that. This is Dwarf Fortress. A game that honestly is only at 10% discount. You might think, well, that's not much, but it's a game that doesn't really need to offer much of a discount. It's a colony sim, and a hardcore one at that, with over 20 years nearly of development behind it now, with better looking graphics. The latest version on Steam that's available for the game is a beautiful version at that. If you're looking for a hardcore colony sim that has a steep learning curve but a really rewarding one, you should look no further than Dwarf Fortress, an icon and classic. Moving along to a roguelike game that's also a city builder at 20% off, costing roughly $16 US. This is Against the Storm, published again by Hooded Horse, not their first entry on the list. You may remember Terra Invicta, for example. Now we're looking at what is probably best described as a city builder set in a dark fantasy world where you're tasked to rebuild civilization, to rebuild cities as the Queen's viceroy. Your cities are inhabited by a few different species, humans, lizards, beavers, and they each sort of specialize in different things and want different things. So there are nuances within it. Furthermore, each city area needs to be explored and expanded into the forest, which presents its own challenges. The whole time you're racing against the storm. Zoom out, and of course, you can build multiple cities. This is a roguelike game, so progress will carry through. It delivers more and more, and because of the roguelike way that you unlock technologies slightly randomly or building slightly randomly, it delivers really consistent, great city building experience. Perhaps not quite as good at city building as Cities Skylines though, which is another entry from Paradox Interactive, 70% off, bringing it to around $9. Cities Skylines, the base game. Maybe you want some DLC to go with it. You probably do. But also, the base version is heavily enhanced by a suite of mods. Now, 8 years in development, some of them. There's so much free community content for Cities Skylines. I think you could actually just pick up the base game and be plenty happy enough. What we're watching at the moment, though, you may notice, isn't actually gameplay from Cities Skylines 1, nor is it even a trailer. This is a trailer for Cities Skylines 2. Because as I mentioned, the 8-year-old Cities Skylines 1, now achievable for less than $10, is being replaced soon by Cities Skylines 2. However, it remains most probably the best strategy simulation game if you're interested in building cities. And with Cities Skylines 2 set to release this year, now actually seems like a fairly decent time to pick up Cities Skylines, the first one, if you haven't already. It's available across a suite of platforms now because it was so successful, so it is on console. If for whatever reason you're watching a Steam sale video and looking to purchase a game on console, you can do that as well. I, personally, am looking forward to Cities Skylines 2, and I might need to dust off the first one to jog my memory. Moving along to another hardcore colony sim at 20% off. Again, not much of a discount, but just like Dwarf Fortress, Rimworld is a game that doesn't really need it. Rimworld is a colony sim, and it's one that really encourages story building around it. You'll find yourself, believe it or not, attached to those 2D characters, moving sort of slightly ominously around the world in this somewhat gloomy trailer, because Rimworld has that effect. It's a storytelling game as much as it is a colony simulator, and one that is, of course, really focused on survival, with elements of technological upgrades and progression. Throw in some hardcore survival elements, i.e. the need to eat and have shelter, but also combat, which is constantly threatening you, as well as the threat of yourself, insanity, etc. Rimworld really doesn't disappoint. It delivers across the board. If I had to choose between Rimworld and Dwarf Fortress, personally, I'd choose Rimworld because I have slightly more experience with it, but I'm actually fairly unexperienced in them both, so maybe I need to sit back down with one of the two of them. Rimworld, though, a fantastic buy at 20% off. Don't hesitate and think it's a low discount, because it's not. It's actually probably the most generous we've seen. Next up is Dune Spice Wars at 20% off. This one comes in at around $24 US. It's a unique blend between a 4X strategy game and a real-time strategy game. It plays out in real time, there's no turn-based elements to it, but it plays very much like a 4X game with territories and unlocks as you move across and perhaps convince some of these villagers to adopt your way of life, and of course harvesting, crucially, the spice, which is the entire point of you being there on Arrakis. You'll run into lots of 4X elements, from technological upgrades to trade. It's a fantastic experience, although it's important to note it's still an early access one. Coming up on a year in early access though, I would expect to see it moving through. To their credit, the progress that they have made has been fantastic, and if you've followed it a little bit and maybe you're hesitant to dip in your toes, the last update added, on top of multiplayer that was added to the one previously, some fantastic changes to combat and, crucially, airships. So now we have some light and heavy air vehicles to play with, and of course the sand remains just as treacherous as it always was. Moving into grand strategy, this is Crusader Kings 3, the unique blend of sort of RPG and simulation mixed in with, of course, historical grand strategy. Crusader Kings 3 is set in the Middle Ages, and it tasks us with leading, hopefully, a kingdom, and a massive one at that. Crusader Kings 3 really needs no introduction, although it's important to note it is receiving more DLC, dubbed the Red Wedding DLC, for its ability to allow us to bring in our foes and celebrate and maybe wipe them all out in the process. Crusader Kings 3 is 30% off this time around $40. Not a bad pickup if you're not on that Game Pass best value in gaming life. And moving along to a beautiful entry in the simulation category, Euro Truck Simulator 2 at 75% off. It's one of the cheapest entries into this list at but $5 US. Heck, it's even got a free download if you want to just try it out. But it doesn't have 453,000 reviews with an average of overwhelmingly positive for nothing. This is one of the best simulation games, even if you're not interested in cars, or trucks, or driving, or Europe, or simulators. If you're just vaguely interested in a computer game that you want to sit down and relax and play, which also has some really satisfying progression and unlock elements, whether it be the trucks, their speed, their drivers, their cargo, or the warehouses that you're fitting them out inside of. This is honestly a brilliant simulation game. If you're looking for a sim, look no further than Euro Truck Simulator 2, which will round out my recommendations. Now, of course, there are always games that I can't mention off the top of my head. Prison Architect is another great one at a great price. If you have some that didn't make the list that you think, hey, Jumbo, you know, they really ought to have, let me know below. The comment section in these videos is always fantastic and full of recommendations. And as one final reminder, this is just a week-long sale with publishers from all sides going at it to contribute to the Steam Spring Sale. It ends on the 23rd of March, 2023. So grab the deals while you can. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you next time.